Hi Deepa,
Hi, Raja.
I'm happy that you agreed to join me in this dialogue about ease. Can you introduce yourself first?
Sure. So I live in Bangalore, and of course, like you said, my name is Deepa. And after more than 24 years in the corporate world, I'm right now sort of taking it slow, doing a little bit of work here and there, but mostly just on a journey of chilling out and a little bit of learning. And that's when I also got introduced to Time to Think with you.
Okay, thanks Deepa. So as we discussed today, we are going to have a dialogue on the component of ease from the time to think or the thinking environment. So that is what we are going to do. And since you have been introduced to dialogue in the thinking environment way, so quickly I will still talk about the steps. So basically, we ask a question and then one person responds to the question. And then once the person has thought through, it is like a relay. So you are ready, Deepa?
Yes.
Okay. So before we start, I think I will just read the definition or the way ease is defined in the thinking environment way. Okay. It says discarding internal urgency. Ease creates, urgency destroys. Ease, an internal state free from rush or urgency, creates the best conditions for thinking. Yeah? So, this is what part of the definition is. So, based on this, let me ask a question. Deepa, what do you think and what are your thoughts about the component of ease?
Right. So thinking holistically and thinking deeply. Because I was just thinking the other day, right, that we have so many things happening in our lives nowadays, right? I mean, there's of course information overload, but even in terms of the fact that everyone is involved in a lot of different things. And this whole thing about attention deficit, right? We just, we sort of dwell on things at very short periods of time, and we just skip on to doing many different things, right? And multitasking is something that all of us continue to do all the time. And I think that's also driven partly because there's a sense of this sort of urgency in our mind that, oh, I have to get on to the next thing. So it's like you're doing one thing right now, but you're not completely in it because one part of your mind is just saying, I need to go take care of that one. It's almost like there's a checklist running in your mind. And then, you've got to go, go after it. So a large part of how we're living today is, sort of the antithesis of ease. It's like the opposite of ease. And therefore, I feel like it is sort of a very key element, one of the key elements in thinking deeply. Like if you're able to get to a place of ease and if you're able to get past that whole thing of, I have a lot of things to do, then it's possible, I think, to do deep thinking, right? And in some ways, ease is something that is, the more you say, I want to get into a space of ease, you can be at unease, right? Because it's not, then it brings in that anxiety of, I want to be at ease, I want to be, more available for whatever I'm doing. But actually, that can cause anxiety as well. So in some ways, it's like, floating, I think, on water. If you try to float, then, you can't float. But if you do nothing and you surrender to the water, then you're floating. So in a lot of ways, I think here, when it comes to in this, in a thinking environment, if you surrender yourself to the process and say, this is where the process is a process, and then there's me, and then there's the other people who are thinking with me, nothing else. And you're just surrendering to what comes from there, then I think that is what ease is. Um, and in a lot of ways, I mean, if you look at that picture, it's devoid of a list of things to do, isn't it? Because when you think about floating on water, it's what we do when maybe we're on vacation. We've told ourselves that I'm not going to be bothered by everything else that's going around me. I'm just going to be with myself. I'm just going to be with this, with this water in this space. So it's similar. I think ease is about surrendering to the space. And it's about saying that I'm not going to be bothered for this time that I'm in the thinking environment. I'm going to put aside everything else and be in this space and see what magical things can happen and experience the lightness actually, like floating on water. Um, there's a certain, um, there's a certain sort of freeness that we experience when we are at ease, the same lightness that we feel when we are floating on water. And I think surrendering to that is something that, feels like ease to me. What do you think, Raja?
So, couple of thoughts. I think from what you said, ease seems to create focus,
Hmm.
right? So, like you said, in some sense, if I'm at ease, I'm not thinking of something else. I'm not in an urgency to go to the next activity or even next thought, right? I'm allowing, like, I think the image you talked about is so beautiful. It's about floating in the water, not trying to float in the water, right? So if you try to be at ease, that itself will become unease. Okay. So that's something that what you said is very interesting. The second thing that came to me is, I have this crazy continuum. Okay? I talk about sloth is one, and laziness is or laze is the next one, and next is ease, and then we have unease, and the other extreme is disease. Okay, so in some sense, what you say makes sense. It's a very, very fine balance of not going into the unease side or the sloth side. And also, I don't know what you're saying is also, I'm remembering a quote by Frederick Wells. Okay, this is the book called Gestalt Therapy Verbatim. He defines, he doesn't define, he says anxiety is a gap between now and then. Okay. So, in some sense, if I'm at ease, I am not in the past, I am not in the future, I am in the moment. I think that is where, the floating example and wherever the thought or the river takes me, I'm willing to float and go along with it. And the other thing that comes to me is also in thinking is far more effortless. Right? You don't put so much pressure to think. You just float and it comes and it takes you. So these are some of my thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you beautifully put this thing about, on one end of the continuum is sloth, right? And I think that it is not sloth because even when you're floating, if you fall asleep, then obviously you're not going to be floating. So there is a sense of, actually a huge sense of awareness and consciousness, which is also present when you're at ease in a thinking environment, which makes you completely available for this conversation or the thinking environment conversation. And that is really the difference, which
Mm,
is like and in some ways it's like also I think in meditation, isn't that what we try to do,
mm,
trying to be at a level of consciousness and awareness, but not controlling it,
mm.
just being in that space. So yeah, I think I really like that, the continuum that you talked about. I think the other thing that comes to my mind is that what typically causes unease, right, Raja? In situations, we did talk about this part about the things I need to do, which is in some ways external to the process itself. or, the conversation. And when I say the process, I mean the conversation and the thinking that we are sitting together and doing intentionally. So what I might be doing, what I need to do next, the next meeting I need to go to, or, the fact that I need to go and check my, credit card statement and pay my, credit card bills or my electricity bills or whatever it is, right? And those are external. But sometimes unease may be caused also by things that I might be overthinking about the process itself. So, for example, if I have a conversation scheduled, say, thinking session scheduled. And then I might be conscious and worried that, oh, will I do a right job as a thinking partner? Um, or I might be thinking that, how well will it work with, the other thinking partner? So what I'm saying is there might be unease creeping in around the process itself as well. Will I remember the right things to say? Will I have the presence of mind, in that space and things like that? So, I think ease is just about being aware of these. Like we said, it's not about doing something, but being aware that these can come in the way. Just that awareness, I think, is very valuable, to come to a state of ease. What do you think?
Yeah, from what you said, there are two things that are coming to me. I think one, many a times we are not at ease because of probably expectations. Right? I expect I have to be like this, or I have to think like this, or I expect this has to happen, or you have to be like it. Any of these expectations seems to be creating unease. The second thing that is coming to me is also fears and anxieties, right? And worries. Like you said, will I do a good job? Have I done enough thinking? So anything to do with fears and anxieties also in some sense take us away from ease. But as you said, these are realities, right? We get fears and anxieties when we are talking also. But paying attention to it, in my experience, I have seen it. I speak about this principle from particle physics. The moment you observe it changes, right? So the moment I say, hey, I'm anxious and I'm seeing it, I have seen immediately I come back to ease. Yeah. So even noticing when I'm moving to unease, right? And just seeing that itself is one that helps us to come back to ease. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head that just being aware and saying that, okay, I can feel the anxiety, in my body or, in how I'm speaking or whatever, and then just noticing it helps. And also, I think saying that it is in some ways baseless in the sense that we know that, we don't necessarily have to come to a particular outcome, in a thinking conversation. It's about reaching, the breadth of our thinking. It's about reaching the depth of our thinking, but it's not about coming to the right conclusion or the right interpretations or whatever it is. It's not even about coming to the same understanding. We could disagree with what we are speaking and, still freely be having the conversation. So really, like you said, it's not about getting to a particular outcome. So to tell ourselves that this anxiety is actually baseless. If the anxiety is about outcomes, and similarly being aware of whatever it is that the anxiety is about, and saying that, oh, actually it's some sort of a mechanical thing I'm getting into, but right now there is no real need for me to to sort of be attentive to this anxiety in a thinking environment. It is a completely safe environment. So there's no need for me to be attentive to this anxiety. I think reminding ourselves about it is really valuable. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the other thing is also that in some ways, Raja, when I've thought about ease, since we're talking about what ease means, in a lot of ways for me, ease and attention have sort of gone very closely together. So what I mean by that is, when I'm able to pay like real attention and, all elements of attention to what is happening in the conversation, really being there,
Mm.
in the here and now, exactly what you said as well. It's the gap between the now and the future. If you're really able to be in the now and, in the conversation without thinking about what it means in the future, what it meant in the past, or what it means in terms of actions, or what it means in terms of how I judge that, like my own rights and wrongs about what is being said, then there is just that, right? And that is pure attention. And when you're in that state, actually, there's just you, there's just the conversation, there's just the other person, and there's nothing else. So then, you are in perfect peace in a lot of ways. So, in a lot of ways, I have sort of experienced that attention and ease in a sort of interconnected way. When there's really pure attention, then ease happens naturally. When there's ease, pure attention sort of happens naturally. What do you think?
So when I started this whole journey 3 years back, in the Time to Think website, there is a questionnaire. If you do the online test, it kind of tells you which are the bottom two, or it gives you scores on all the 10 components. And my bottom most was peace. So I think you know me for many years. So then I started reflecting about it because for me, quick action, moving fast, quick results, outcomes, like you talk about outcomes, right? So, so all these were so critical that I realized I used to say a statement very proudly. Okay? I take a path shorter than straight line. Okay? And I think really last 3 years I have worked quite a lot on this. And many people who know me from the past say, yeah, you are a little different now. But the most interesting thing in this journey I have seen is a statement by Trisha when I did the coaching certification. She said, Raja, you have to come out of your outcome obsession. You have to just be there, hold it. As a time to think coach, outcome is theirs. You are only providing generative attention. Nothing happens, nothing happens. So that again was a very strong statement, but it has created a lot of confusion in life. Okay, so now suddenly from outcome obsessed person, I have to come to the other end of saying I will be at ease with the floating. But I think, but what I see when I'm doing this now, there is a sense of calm and peace. Like one of the things Nancy talks about is when you are in urgency, adrenaline gets pumped into the brain, and adrenaline reduces the quality of thinking because adrenaline is for survival, not for thinking. Right? So when I'm at ease, I think when I'm thinking at ease as well as when I'm at ease as a thinking partner, it creates a very calm, peaceful, like you said, total attention and a safe kind of a space. So that is something that I have seen. When I asked you for this dialogue, I said you are one person who epitomizes peace. Okay, you might not agree to that word I used, but I know you for more than 20 plus years, and most of the time, whether it's office or personal, or as a facilitator, as a participant, what do you do to bring this level of peace? Are there rituals? Are there practices? Or were you born with the gene of peace? What do you think?
Yeah, so one of the things I said, when I was introducing myself, I said right now I'm mostly chilling and, taking it slow. So, in general, I've been a person who likes to be in the deep of things with one thing, rather than in 100 different things at the same point in time. Uh, you know, because I think I like to go stay with things and, sort of think and do stuff and stuff like that. But at the same time, I also resonate with what you said, right? This thing about being very tied into what is the outcome, right? And I find myself doing that quite a lot as well, especially at work, right? So then there was this whole thing about, now given a finite amount of time, where do I use my time that will best give, output? And when you're at work, you do that. I mean, you do tend to look at um, what is the best outcome for you, for your team, for the organization, in the resources and within the time that you have. So that outcome orientation is so ingrained in us. So it's difficult to, I think, let go of that. But I think over time, there have been situations where I've found myself where I'm sort of split, right? My mind is partly here, partly there. And at the end of it, I've not felt happy about what I have given to that, to that activity, the attention or the level of thinking or the level of commitment, because I felt split in my own self with, how much I'm committing to it. And that's when I think it has led me to believe that it's okay, if at that point in time you're willing to set aside this other things and then just focus on that one thing. And at the end of it, I think it all takes the same amount of time. And the quality of what you can, what you can come out with by giving it that committed time and space is way better than if you're split across many different things at the same time. It's paradoxical because it looks like you can only do a few things if you're too dedicated to something at a given point in time. But for me personally, it has been more satisfying, to be in the space that I am, and more, I think more rewarding as well. So that has been a personal takeaway, and therefore I try to do it. It's not easy, and sometimes, Raja, maybe you experience me as being at ease, but I may not completely be at ease internally. But I enjoy ease. I really enjoy ease. It's okay for me to be, not rushing around, because I think once we experience that, that's the case for a lot of people. And that's why a lot of us also, sort of yearn for this period of vacation, because what is vacation? I mean, it is being on ease. And I think all of us naturally are good at it, but it's just a matter of, I think, um, accepting it, and saying it's okay. And that I'm not going to lose things if I'm at ease and if I'm in this space completely at a given point in time. So yeah, it's not, I don't think I have anything to, in terms of wisdom around it, but that's been my experience of ease. It's not very easy always, because I do have these anxieties of, am I doing justice? Exactly what you said. Expectations are high, of whatever it is that's being done. So it's difficult to be in a space of ease, but I've enjoyed it every time that, I've found myself in that space. Yeah. What about you? Like I have seen the change in you, like you said, and I think I have also commented that in the past. So what has your journey been about you?
Because most of my work, if I have to design something, I have to be in it fully, right? So one thing I think, probably, even though I have the outcome obsession problem, but what I don't have is what I call it as activity trap,
Hmm.
right? So when we talk to people, they say, I have such a long list of things to do, right? So the moment we are into activity trap, we also get into mindless action, right? So that is where ease helps in moving to mindful action, right? So that is one thing that came to me when you spoke about this, right? And the second thing I have seen, I think this you might have seen even before I came to time to think, right? Comfort with silence. So, for example, I don't know. I went to Ramakrishna Mission School for 7 years. We were meet, sit at least 2 hours every day, sit quiet, do meditation, whatever. Right. So many a times, even when I'm asking a question as a thinking partner, somewhere ease is about just being comfortable with that silence, right? But many of us are not comfortable with silence. So if I ask you a question and you're not responding, I'm getting anxious and then I'll fill it up with one more question or my thought, right? So I think ease is about comfort with no action and silence. So for me, I think my journey with ease is more than just as a thinking partner or a think or in the time to think. So one of the things is that my expectation, for example, whoever works for me, I have expectations. And my expectations are decently high, and then I inform. And when it doesn't happen, I become extremely pushy. Right? Then I even used to shout. Simple thing I can tell you is the amount of shouting I used to do 3 years back has come down. So what I realized is by getting into this urgency and shouting, one, I'm messing up their life. But more than that, I am messing up my own, what do you call, physical health and mental health. Because after some of those shouting, for 30 minutes, I'll be frozen. Because that level of intense anger, right? So right now, it doesn't happen. I don't know, very rarely, but I have not seen it in the last 6 months. So that is one thing I have said. Yes, I have expectations, but if it doesn't happen, right? Can I be comfortable? So that is one that I have seen has helped to ease. And the next thing, I don't know, it's coming to me. I always want to be in control. Okay? Not only about what I think, what I do, even whoever is working with me, participants, everybody, I want the situation to be in control, right? But the moment I get into that mode, ease goes, right? Ease is about accepting it will go where it has to go. And I'm, like you said, I'm willing to float with it. I think that is the biggest change because one was the outcome obsession. I will drive everything I do towards that. And I know recently people who have worked with me for many years actually tell you are sounding different, feeling different. But I think the outcome obsession is one. And the second thing I think biggest thing is, like I said, want to be in control of the situation. Philosophically, we say, we have control over nothing and all that. It's all nice. But I think all of us want to be in control, right? So I think that actually creates us. So in some sense, what shift in terms of my own mental models or assumptions is that I have accepted that I may not be in control of situations all the time. So I think that is probably the internal shift. And then also, I think the expectations, right? For example, I'm at ease previously before learning this. If suppose somebody is thinking, it goes to encouragement, but I will be thinking, what if this person is thinking? Okay? Such shallow thinking. Okay. But now I have come to a point of saying at this point of time, wherever they are, this is the best thinking they can do. What I might be thinking is the best is not necessarily at this moment the best for them. So some of these things have actually made me feel at ease, even with my son or people at home in conversations. Yeah, it's been a huge 3 year If I have to say what is one big thing that has happened to me personally, I think moving from urgency to ease is the biggest gain from I to think or thinking about. Yeah, what do you think, Deepa?
So, Raja, everything you said, no, about being in control, especially about being in control, that also sparked off this whole thing that in some ways, no, why do we want to be in control? Because we have an expectation that it should be done in that way. That is the right way, or that is the right outcome, right? So in some ways, if we are more, accepting of multiple realities, that there is one reality that I am aware of and that I think is true for me, but there can be many parallel realities that can be true for many others, or true even for me if I learn to accept it. So in some ways, it is an acknowledgement of that there are multiple realities that can exist in a given space, even in a given point in time, and being okay with that, right? Um, and also, and I think, you said this thing about, your son. I think a lot of our anxieties also stem from this thing of what is right for this person. Or, there's so much more this person can do and they're trapped right now. Or, how do we free this person from, the sort of thinking that they're right currently, and I can see it, and how come they're not, moving out of it? Why do they have to be in this pain? Stuff like that, and so on and so forth. And, that can stem a lot in our conversations. But there's also another more recent, similar sort of learning for me. And one is that of everyone has agency.
Mhm.
All of us have agency. And for our own lives, my context is something that is unique to me, and your context is something that is very unique to you. You are whole in your context, and I'm whole in my context. And I think if we are able to recognize that agency in all of us, um, I think sometimes it is hard. We can see it because we feel like we can see something more than that person is seeing. But if you look at it as, they have an agency in this situation as well, I think that ease comes with a lot more comfort. Because then it's like you're saying, right? One of the things you said was, at this point in time, this is the best thinking they can do. And for that context, maybe that is the right thing. Maybe the universe has willed that that is the right thing because that's the best situation that they can be in any given point. So I think that acknowledgement of agency has also helped me a lot, um, especially in wanting to control things around my family. So that learning has been around things that I have tried to do in the context of my family, done a really bad thing with regard to getting very anxious, getting angry, and things like that. But then realizing that I think I am trying to orchestrate things based on what I'm expecting and what I think, the way I think things should be. But that's not the case, right? I think everyone has the agency to orchestrate that. So that's been a big learning for me as well about ease in general, in life. I think a valuable, very valuable takeaway for me that has reduced my sense of anxiety as well in general. Yeah. And what do you think further, Raja, about ease?
So, couple of things came to me, like you said, anxiety, right? So one of the things I tried, I think, when was it? Maybe in December, was to do two thinking sessions with Isa, my son.
Mm.
I said if I can do that, it will be beautiful. And I was able to hold all the 10 components, including ease. And he thought through two different topics which were important for him. And the most interesting thing is that I'm seeing just being there for him to think through whatever he thought through in the last, say, 2, 3 months, he has actually acted on them. I didn't give advice. I didn't get into anxiety. I didn't get into infantilizing him by saying, no, 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 whatever you're doing is nonsense. I just did a thinking session in true form. So what you say makes sense, especially in when the stakes are high in the relationships, right? Anxiety can take over, and where even there is possible. And I think what you said is the beautiful thing, right? If I believe that the other person also has agency. Yeah. So that is one thought that came to me. Second thing that came to me from whatever you talk about, I'm seeing even the component of ease has deep connection with the component of difference. Right? You said, no, can we accept their reality is different from our reality? Their lived experiences are different from our lived experiences. So the way they will think, the speed at which they will go may be very different from us. So I think I remember my father when I was in business with him in my early 20s. I used to get upset about some of our customers. He will say, he might be a drunkard, womanizer, he might be whatever it is. Can you accept them as they are? It was very difficult for me. I was 20, I would say, what the hell? These guys don't pay money, go and do all kinds of nonsense. But he actually said in Tamil, can you accept them as they are? Okay. And the other thing that comes to me is, I think it's a common friend from our whole time. He used to talk about accept, no, the statement used to be, what it is now cannot be anything else than what it is. Okay. So for me, it looks like ease is about a very deep level of acceptance of the reality, self, and others. I think that is what probably brings ease. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. I think when we talk about ease, when we talk about attention, I think we keep coming back to this here and now, right? What is right now is what it is right now. If I'm saying this right now, whatever I'm doing, this picture, whatever I'm saying is there, with you nodding. I mean, that is not going to change, right? I mean, that is what it is. So I think accepting that, and it's such an obvious truth, but we actually have to talk so much to to accept it, which is very interesting. But yeah, I completely agree with that. Um, and also this part that you said, no, Raja, when we do this, we are really there for the other person. That is the highest level of support actually we can give to anybody, don't you think? Because then we are not bringing in any of our biases, our elements into it, but it is completely creating a space for that other person to discover it. And that is the highest level of support that we can provide to anybody. And exactly like you said about Isa's thinking, I guess that's the magic that happened, which was creating that sort of envelope of warmth, of of that sense of complete encouragement, of that sense of what you say and what you do here is what I'm completely with you for, right? And I think that is the kind of encouragement we all need to do our best, whether it is in a thinking session or in life. And when you're doing that thinking and you get that sort of support, that's the best gift that we can give to anybody. And I have felt that too. Like I've been surprised by the kind of thinking I've been able to do when I found that sort of encouragement and complete sort of support from somebody. Simply because they were fully attentive, they were at ease. They were willing to see me and what I was saying and nothing more. And I think that comes, when we're able to be at ease. Otherwise, we sort of tend to muddy the water, so to say, with our anxiety. Yeah, I think, I'm good. What do you think, Raja?
Yeah, what you said is interesting. I have a question, okay, from
Yeah.
listening to you. See, you have been part of, I don't know, for what, 25 years being part of meetings in organizations, as well as facilitating meetings in organizations, right? So now if you look at the word we talk about leveraging intellectual capital, right? So in some sense, that's what it is. And we talk about creative thinking or generative thinking. So how do you think, as a participant as well as a facilitator, have you seen experiences when the ease actually brought in something which was so creative?
Yeah. So, something, when you said this, one thing struck me, right? In the corporate world, there's this, there's this saying that let's all, let's go off site and then we'll all be in a, in a laid back environment. We'll have a few drinks and people loosen up and, that's when the conversations happen. Or, the best conversations happen when we're just sitting together around maybe, like um, around a fireplace or, not really in a meeting. And what actually are we trying to do there? We're creating a sense of ease, aren't we? I mean, it just struck me when you said this about corporate meetings. Without saying it, essentially, that's what we're trying to do when, in the corporate world, we say, let's create an informal environment, and that's where the best conversations happen. Which is a little sad, isn't it? Because we have meetings to do the best thinking, but we actually have to create a non-meeting environment to get the best thoughts. so, so to your question about, when has it, when have some really beautiful thoughts or, creative things come out of a meeting environment? Well, very surely that has required prep. I think people just rushing into a meeting room from whatever they're doing and then, getting into a conversation leads us, I think, are good for maybe transactional outcomes, but for really deep, longer term thinking, strategic thinking, or, really coming up with um, something out of the box or out of, the what is happening every day and, what is being accepted as the usual. Breaking that, I think, requires preparation. Um, and therefore, the best conversations have typically been late in the evening because you've sort of, in a meeting environment, you've started in the morning, it's been agenda driven, there's a bit of structure, you're going together, you're thinking together as a group. Then along the day, you've sort of set a sort of, synergy in the group. There's a, thinking that's established, which is you're sparking each other's, thought process. You've settled down to listening to each other. I think that is also an important part because when you start off, there are lots of things going on in our own minds and we're listening to our own chatter and hardly listening to the other person. But then as you settle down and you've got the whole day, to have this conversation. And then, the group sort of falls into a nice pattern of, a pattern is the wrong word, but, into a nice sort of harmony in conversation where we're willing to look at different ideas as well, or even disagreements, but in a way that is not hampering each other's conversation. So I have seen this happen, like I said, especially when we've gotten together to talk about what should we do as an organization, in the future. And there's been this permission also to just go wild in our thinking, right? So in a lot of ways, those meetings have been useful because then you say, don't limit yourself by thinking what is possible today, but think about, if we could do anything, then, what are the possibilities for us as an organization, as a group, as a leadership team. So I think those have, created removing that boundary of thinking. Many times we put boundaries in our own thinking. I think identifying those boundaries, acknowledging those boundaries and saying, for this meet, they're important for our, maybe our business as usual action orientation. But when it comes to identifying something new and discovering something new, then we don't need those limitations. So giving us the permission, I think, to think wild, to think, like we say, blue sky thinking, has been one of the key factors for us, and I've seen beautiful thinking come out. I think the other thing that has been important, in that meeting was the fact that we felt like a team. We felt like, we were people that we could count on each other to do the journey together. And these are the right people that I want to do this exciting journey together. I believe that the team really believed in it. And that's why I was able to also do that sort of thinking. It was not just empty thing, but it was something that I had a sense of connection to because I felt like I could be a part of this group who could do this journey together in reality, right? So that vision of what we want to do together also made sense because it felt like it was worthy of doing,
Mm.
with the group that I resonated with, that I had known to sort of work with, and that I had known to know as human beings as well. So I think it was a combination of things to answer your question, Raja. There's a little bit of prep in the process itself, like, setting in a little bit of structure. So we thought, differently from how we do a regular thinking in meetings. But then there was also, I think, this human element of connection that was important to the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Raja? Because you've also been a part of, and you and I have been a part of such meetings as well and conversations.
So what comes to me, Deepa, before looking at other part,
Hmm.
uh, I have this, people who are close to me, I have this whole thing about I lie down and stare at the ceiling. Okay? And I remember, especially one close friend, he will say, "Hey, go lie down and stare at the ceiling." So, and I think in that moment of stillness, the kind of ideas that have come is amazing. Okay.
Hmm.
Even when I'm designing a program, there are an intervention, and there are, say, new problem, new proposal. There are times I say I'm going to sleep over it, and those times I will suddenly by 3:30 I'll wake up. Everything has settled, right? So I allow that few days for it to sink in, settle, and take its own course. So I think that is what, if I have to go back and look at when I have thought by myself, the best creative solutions have come when I have slept over things and I was not rushing into it. I was just saying it'll come when it has to come. And it comes. It has always come. So that is the first thing. In terms of what you said, right? The meetings are what we have facilitated. I think what you said is very, very critical. If there is internal competition between people, right? Who's bigger, who's better, whose idea is better. If that is there, ease doesn't happen, right? So in some sense, when you talk about an offsite and having even the place which is informal, and then people loosening up, I think these seem to be very, very essential conditions, especially when you want to do generative thinking. Yeah. I think what you said is beautiful. If it is a regular review meeting, you have to think about regular actions. You may not need that kind of a thing with that high level of ease. But when you really want to think through something which is a breakthrough solution, think about blue sky, whatever they talk about, right? I think ease becomes, I think, a fundamental component for people to go into that space. Yeah, I totally agree with you. What do you think?
Stillness. That is the word that I think is beautiful. And like you said, waking up in the morning, you get those thoughts. And I get some of my best thoughts when I'm doing yoga.
Mm.
So it's like, it's just that sometimes I feel like just getting up and doing something about it. But you're right, because when you're doing yoga, you do experience that sort of stillness, and from that stillness, something emerges. Um, so I could completely relate to this thing about waking up in the morning with the best ideas and then, doing that. And then what are we trying to do with ease here? Which essentially, I mean, and that's what we're trying to also bring into a thinking environment, aren't we? Like um, the same kind of stillness in our mind so that, our thinking person, the person who's doing the thinking is able to reach into their innermost sort of wisdom and, come up with, thoughts and ideas. And I think the 10 components, therefore, together are like it's almost like codification is the wrong word, but an articulation of what happens when we are sleeping and we get up in the morning or when we're doing yoga in
Yeah.
in a more controlled way. Like it's, when you're doing yoga, you don't really control it. You let it happen. When you're sleeping, of course, you don't control it. But in this case, it's like trying to create that environment with those conditions present, and hoping that ease is created. And I think ease by itself and all the other 10 components as well, or the other 9 components, they're complementary to each other, right? And you remove a couple of them, and the other components are going to suffer. So it's in some ways like a table with 10 legs, and if you remove one, it is going to be making a difference. um but of course, I think at different points in time when we are balancing those 10 components, Raja, there will be some components that will be at a lower level, right? They won't all be active at the same point. And I'm thinking that that's okay, right? And therefore, even with ease, there will be points when, it will disturb us. It's not a constant sort of, um, it's not a constant state of mind or a constant state that you can always be in. But the key point is that when you are in that, you're just aware that, okay, my ease is going down right now, to just sort of take a deep breath and say and acknowledge that and say, okay, what is happening to me? What is happening to my state of ease and why is it happening? I think is helpful in in sort of trying to get back there. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, listening to you, something that came to me is I'm a physics student. So I always say if there is no vacuum, nothing can come inside. It's like that you might know that the story of the Zen master and full cup and all, right?
Hmm.
So in some sense, ease is all about being in the moment and being in stillness and emptiness to, in some sense, invite the thoughts that has to come to us. Okay, so feels very spiritual, but
Mhm.
I think that's what listening to the last few things we talked about, it looks like ease is about being in stillness with vacuum, so that what has to come from the universe as thought will to come to us. Yeah, so that's, I think it's crazy, but that's what came to. Yeah. What do you think, Deepa?
I think it's a beautiful summarization of ease and everything that we have spoken. Um, yeah, nothing much to add at this point in time. I'm sure like there'll be a lot more to experience about ease. Uh, and maybe there'll be thoughts that will come up in our minds, Raja, when you wake up in the morning and when I do yoga tomorrow. Yeah, but for now, I think I'm good, Raja. What about you?
Yeah, good. I think very, very interesting dialogue. Quite, I think a lot of interesting thoughts also came. Okay, so Deepa, hmm, the quality I want to appreciate, I don't want to appreciate ease as usual. So the quality of connecting what seemed to be not connected, right? Because what is visibly connected, your ability in this conversation, the quality of connecting which seem unconnected and forming a picture was something that I want to appreciate. I don't know whether there's a right word for it. It's about seeing invisible connections between elements of a system. So I think that's the only way I can say. Yeah. Yeah. It's really wonderful.
Thank you. And what I would like to appreciate about you, Raja, is that you epitomize the concepts that you speak about or that you teach, or that you're a facilitator for others to learn about. So you don't just stay at the concept level, but you experience it and you become that. So for a learner, I think, or for somebody who is having the conversation with you, you're actually experiencing it. So you epitomize, whatever it is that we're speaking. So thank you for that.
Yes, Deepa, thanks a lot for your time. And I hope people really find some meaning in this conversation that can help them to be at ease. Thank
you, Raja. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me for this conversation. Really grateful. And like you said, I hope people enjoy listening to us. Thank you.